Thanks for tuning into another episode of Leaders Lane. Today on the show, we've got Phil Portman. He's a serial entrepreneur, member of the Forbes Technology Council, and founder of tech-driven companies like Techstrip, built to streamline marketing and customer engagement. The thing about Phil is that he's not just about building businesses. He's passionate about helping others define and achieve success on their terms. He's also the host of the Success Is podcast, where he uncovers the mindsets behind achievement, and also the author of The 3 Keys to Success, which we will be chatting about today. Phil believes success is rooted in purpose and joy, and the overwhelm part, well, that's a choice. So I'm looking forward to exploring that in our conversation. But let's dive in because it's going to be a powerful one, and it's all about building a life and business that works for you. Phil, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that great introduction.
So when I talk to different entrepreneurs, they often have this lemonade stand story or mowing the grass lawn story. How did you kick off your entrepreneurial career or stint as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I was in the corporate world, was making six figures in my 20s, and we had just had our children. We had a 1 and a 3-year-old, and I was traveling a lot. And I was FaceTiming with my kids, and my mother had raised 7 of us as a single mother. I did not want my wife raising our children as a single mother. I wanted to be more a part of my kid's life. However, the only way up in the corporate world was going to be more travel, more time away from my family. And so I said, you know what? I want to dive in. I want to be an entrepreneur. And so I started out with real estate. I was flipping houses and had some rental properties. Then I started a food delivery company, and we franchised it across 6 states before selling it. And then I really got into the tech side of my business. An interesting thing on your lemonade stand thing, though. So I had to have kind of this confidence thing to jump, to leap, right? I needed to feel confident with still having a stream of income while I was pursuing my goals. So what I did was I would go inside stores, like big box stores, retailers, and I would go to their clearance section and look for items that were extremely clearance, buy them, and then sell them online on sites like eBay. And I did it not as a long-term thing, just to be could I survive on this? And I could. I actually made enough during that time that it made me think, you know what? I don't need a job. I don't need a W-2 job to survive. I could do this. And so it was really just kind of this temporary confidence booster to say, okay, I'm going to pursue my dreams now that I know that that's kind of out of the way. I could always fall back on it.
Yeah, that is so cool. I love that you've shared that with us because often entrepreneurs, there's probably a couple of different mindsets, but different people are go all in, do the thing, don't, focus on anything else. And then there's some people that are keep your side hustle, if they like to call it, and your day job until, you can make that transition. So it sounds like for you, it was a little bit of both, you created your own concoction there. What would you, where you are today, what would you say to someone that's just in that position where you were then, and they're wanting to start a business and they're unsure if they should keep a job at the same time or just go all in?
Yeah, before you dive in all in, kind of like I did, do an examination of your own life and figure out what your goals and your priorities are. And if you're married or you have a partner, have them do the same. Always start with the alignment in the beginning before you do any major changes. I would say also, if you have major life choices that are forced on you, be it a change in career, could be even a death of a family member, take that time to evaluate where you are in the trajectory of your life before you move forward. In that examination, you may find that certain things that you do or spend money on may no longer bring you joy. And if you can start letting go of those things in the name of your entrepreneurship journey, your bigger goals, your bigger vision, then you're going to set yourself up for success. At the time before I made the leap, I had paid off my vehicles. I made sure that our spending was extremely down. So we had a set weekly budget that I knew Worst case scenario, I can go get a job somewhere making this amount and be comfortable. So I was doing things to kind of prepare myself. But for me at the time, the freedom of entrepreneurship and the goal of being with my family was more important than stuff, than the other things, than the looking like I was successful, than the new car and all of those things. You may examine it and say, you know what? I prefer to have the fancy car and all these things and the prestige and the title and so on and so forth. And maybe upon that evaluation, you say, well, entrepreneur is not the thing for me. Maybe I want to stay in the career that I'm in, and that's perfectly fine. But this needs to be something that you analyze and discuss. And once again, if you're in a relationship with your partner as well, and have that honest conversation around what is important to you and what can you do without to help reach your dreams, reach your goals.
Okay, so you've touched on like a couple of different things I'm really passionate about within that. So the first one is, first of all, I don't know that if I've had anyone yet say to me priorities and align them with your partner. So I have had a priorities conversation recently with somebody, but the way that you've worded it is really interesting to me, because I think sometimes it's easy to get caught up in your own dream and then think, I'm just going to go and do this. And the way that you sort of invited your partner or, you know, whoever else needs to be considered in the conversation, I thought that was really beautiful, because you're asking them to look at what their priorities are and what they want, and then you're looking at your own, and then you're coming back to the middle. And I feel like that's such a beautiful way to start. So let's just touch on that bit. How did that exercise go with your partner?
My wife is the most important person on this planet to me. If she kills something, it's dead. If she says no to something, it's dead, because she is the most important thing to me on this planet. We share goals, we share dreams, we share things together. And I know that the person that is here with me on this journey through life, sharing experiences with me, we're in this together. And I want to make sure that I'm doing whatever I can to support her goals. And that's really the purpose of this. And in turn, the more I support her goals, the more she supports mine. And I was fortunate enough to marry somebody who is, honesty is the first component of our relationship. We're not the type that is not going to tell the other person that they're looking fat in the clothing they're wearing or something like that. We're brutally honest with that. And I think all relationships should be founded in having honest conversations like that. So that's first and foremost. But we also complement each other, and we're very, very different in how we look at things. So I'll ask for feedback on things that I know I struggle with, because she compliments me well along with that. But it's a lot easier to pursue your goals and dreams when your partner knows that you are supporting their goals and dreams as well, because then they're in turn more likely to help you support your goals and dreams. Something we did early on in our relationship, and I talk about it in my book, is both of us sat down and wrote 100 goals that we wanted to achieve in life. If you've ever done it, it's hard. It's difficult. You'll get to like 40 and then you're really stretched. But what it does is it forces you to think about, what is important to me? What do I really want? What's my priorities? What is my legacy going to be? And you just start digging. And then you take those goals and you really start analyzing them to identify what's important. Then you sit down with your spouse and have an open discussion around those goals. Do we want to have kids? Where do we want to live? What does our house look like? How do we want to spend time together? What are we going to do when we're old? Things like that. You're just having those discussions. Because what I found in most people is we're going along this life like we're floating on in a river, and we're running into banks and we're falling over the waterfalls and things like that. Wouldn't it be great if we had a map? Not to say we're always going to end up where we want to get on that map, but you're more likely to at least get in the right direction, right? And if you have a map and your partner has a map and you are helping each other out, you're unstoppable in this life. And that's where I want to be. And that's the type of relationship that I want.
That's really beautiful. Like I I've not done that activity myself, and I think it would be pretty tough to go to 100 goals. But I love the challenge, and I think it's so beautiful. You know, we've just been talking for a few minutes, but I can already tell how much of a family man you are and how family is a priority for you. And I can see how that influences your life. And what the other part to what you were originally saying before was, after doing that exercise, you can also evaluate, you know, what you don't necessarily want to hold on to anymore when you start in your entrepreneurial journey. For example, the car, or maybe you find out that you do want to keep the car, whatever. But it's interesting, sometimes we can go through life thinking we want something, but when you dig a little bit deeper, you realize, oh, I don't actually want that thing. It's like it's somehow been influenced by, maybe socially, by, you know, the environment you're currently working in, all different things. So I think both those two things can be such a profound foundation of starting that entrepreneurial journey.
Absolutely. And you're going to go through different stages in your life where something that was important to you at that stage in life is no longer important to you. You could be in a career with somebody where you're in competition with them and you guys got to outdo each other. Well, when you start your own business, your own entrepreneurship journey, you're no longer in competition with that person. So those priorities kind of shift over time. So absolutely, your goals will change, and taking time to actually write them down is incredibly, incredibly important.
And as you were making that transition from corporate to business entrepreneurship, was it an easy transition for you? Did you feel like being in corporate taught you a bunch of the skills that you needed to make that leap? Or what was your process? Did you have to do a bunch of training? How did you go about it?
Yeah, corporate definitely trained me a lot on the
Mhm.
way to do things. A lot of the HR components to it, understanding business P&Ls, marketing. I learned a ton from the corporate world. I'd say the thing that set me back in the corporate world, I had this mindset that there was a right way to do things in entrepreneurship, right? Like a corporate way to do things.
Mhm.
And I do believe that's true in some aspects, specifically human resources and policies and things like that. You want to make sure that you're protecting your employees, which are your greatest asset. So those type of things I took from corporate. But from like the marketing standpoint, the sales standpoint, there were certain things that I had in my mind that said, you're not great at that. You don't know how to do that because you need a degree in marketing and to pull that off, right? You need to hire professionals to handle that sort of thing. And when I started my food delivery company, I was doing things very different than a lot of other companies, but I saw massive growth. And I reached this point where I said, okay, I'm going to hire the marketing company. And I've made enough money at this. I'm going to hire a marketing company that knows what they're doing. Out here in the Detroit area, we have the big three auto companies. So I
Mhm.
hired a company that worked with the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler. Couldn't go any better than them. And they were really expensive. I spent good six figures on this marketing company. You know what happened? It flopped. They were terrible. It didn't work at all. The way
Yeah.
that they were doing things was all legacy. It was old. It was behind the
Mm.
times. If I had the massive budget like the big three auto company did, sure, it may have worked out. But I
Mm.
didn't. I was working with this grassroots budget to grow my business. So the strategies that I was using at the time worked phenomenally. And I wish I would have known that early on, that what works is what works.
Yeah.
And what I found out later on was that the things that I was doing online with social media and all that stuff was just ahead of the time, because later on we found a lot of these big brands ended up doing the exact same things that I was doing. The things that made my company personalized, made it unique and individualized to our customers, were the things that they later on ended up replicating as large companies because they were so successful.
Mm.
So yes, there was things I took away, but I think there was also some limitations that I had in my mind. And if I was to go back and tell myself, hey, something, it'd be like, hey, just trust your instinct, trust your gut. You're doing things right and you'll figure it out.
I'm a big believer in following your gut and trusting that. I think it's definitely important, when people come into your life and that can add value, you tune in and see maybe what works and take those pieces and then, maybe mix it in with what your gut's telling you. Uh, so can you tell me, could you give us some concrete examples when you started the food delivery business? What were some of the things that you were doing differently to customize and personalize for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So we would specifically market in the different areas with human people. So you saw our delivery drivers, you saw like the behind the scenes and what we were doing. You saw our interactions with the customers, our interactions with the restaurants. It was not a corporate polished brand. It was us out there connecting directly with our customers and showing the service that we were doing on the ground level. And that at the time felt very raw. It felt unpolished. It wasn't the clean corporate, appeal. So for us at the time, it didn't seem like the right thing to do. But if you look now, you fast forward to what social media has become, there is a lot of that trust relationship. People want to see the business that they're working with. They want to see the employees. They want to see the customer interactions with the employees. So the things that we were doing back then were simply ahead of the time. And they were really effective in the areas that we were doing. We had built a brand where people were loyal to us because they got a glance to see behind the scenes. We pulled back the curtain and showed them what was going on behind the scenes. And so it was their story as much as ours. And so it was very effective in the areas that we were. We saw great growth. And as other larger companies started trying to come in, there was a strong resistance from our customers to do it because they had built this company with us and they felt a strong loyalty towards it. And so nowadays you see a lot of companies trying to duplicate that. And this is something we were doing back then.
Yeah, you were totally ahead of the curve. And it just goes to show, I think, I mean, I've been interviewing people since I was about 20 years old, so quite a number of years now. But the one thing I've always noticed is people want to know the story behind the brand. Even back then, there was this shift happening where people didn't just want to see the company, they were interested in who's behind the brand, and that then created that level of trust. And I think social media has just sort of highlighted that on a larger scale now. Do you think that that's something that will always be the case, particularly as now technology plays such a different role in our lives?
Absolutely. And I would say more so now because of AI, right? I am inundated, as I'm sure you probably are, with marketing material that's clearly AI generated. Some of it's kind of creepy in the way that the amount of information they have about you that they compile into these messages. And you say, no human would put that amount of information into a message. They'd be weird, they'd be creepy on it. So now I'm really looking for authentic relationships and communication with companies. I want to know that it's raw, that it's an individual I'm dealing with, because it's just all this noise of AI generated material and marketing information and so on and so forth. And don't get me wrong, I am a technology enthusiast. We've done a lot with AI and technology in our companies, with helping with compliance, helping with marketing messages, and so on and so forth. So, from that standpoint, there are great things that are coming from AI. But even when you're using AI, you can't be lazy. Your voice still needs to come through in the messaging and the marketing materials and the things that you're putting out there, because that's the differentiator between you and what you're doing and everyone else out there. There's something that sets you apart, the reason why customers go to you, why they buy from you, why they have the relationships with you. And if you lose those through direct automation, AI, and so on and so forth, then you lose your brand. And so in this day and age, your individuality, your brand is so important. Make sure that you don't lose it in the AI mess that's out there right now.
I'm beaming on the inside because everything you've just shared is something I resonate with so much. And that's a message that I'm constantly talking to my clients about with their brand messaging and saying how, your essence, I relate to it as essence, and your brand voice is like 100% the thing that's going to differentiate you. And if you don't know what that is, then you need to find out, because I can't tell you the number of, particularly for this podcast, pitches that I get. And I don't mind people using AI, but I can tell the ones that just simply copy and paste. And now I sort of become like, did this person really want to chat, or do they really, I like picking out the things where I still feel like there's a human behind the message, because it is right now, everybody's just using AI, and I'm on the same page. I agree. It's great. There are wonderful things about it. And I think the people that are going to stand out are the ones that still bring themselves to the table, like you beautifully explained.
Yeah, use it as a tool, but don't get lazy with it. Make sure you're still involved in the entire process. Absolutely.
Yeah. And now with your entrepreneurial journey, you've had like different industries you've dipped your toe into.
Yeah.
What's that process been like for you? Has it, like, how do you choose, or is it like the inspiration comes to you and then you act on it?
That's a great question. For me, yeah, I'm looking for something that first of all aligns with my values and who I am and what I don't want to do, right? And what I do want to do. And I think that's important to understand when you're defining what you want to do in this life. It's important to know what you do want and what you don't want. And once again, we went back to the family component. And part of the reason why I sold the food delivery company was I was back to traveling nonstop again. And I felt like I was in that corporate world again, the one that I had left. I was doing it all over again. I had built this corporate company that was causing me to travel all over the place again. And I said, well, this is not what I want. This doesn't align with what I had written down as my goals. I had drifted into this thing again. So I sold it. And the next company that I built, I wanted to make sure that I could be with my family. And so the tech company was the ultimate goal with where I headed next. And I was fortunate to find some problems in the communication industry that existed, specifically around text messaging here in the United States. And so I started Techstrip, and I focused on problems that we were having, not only from the text messaging space, but also from the customer service standpoint. I've always been somebody who, when I create a business, I under promise and over deliver with customer service. Like when you go to Techstrip, you can get a real person on the phone or text or chat with you in under 30 seconds. I mean, you're talking to a real person 7 days a week because we're over the top about it. We have meetings if we didn't get a 5-star review on your interaction with a customer service agent. That's how above and beyond we go. And so that's important. So for me, it was making sure that the company that I created aligned with my vision or what my goal was. But I also found an opportunity in an industry that I said, you know what? I think I can do that better. I wasn't inventing it. Text messaging has existed for a long time here in the United States. Business text messaging has existed for a long time in the United States. But there was things that I was finding that were frustrating me and frustrating other people. And I said, you know what? I bet if I can fix that and do it better than they're doing it, people come on over to my company. And I was right. And that's typically how I approach it. Does it align with my values? And would I pay for it? Could I do that better than the other person? And if I can kind of answer those questions, then I think it's a good company to invest in.
Love it. And tell me, do you come up against those moments of self-doubt or looking at the market and going, oh, there's a lot of people doing that? Or is it so much that if it aligns with your values and you feel like you can do it better, that you're like, yeah, I'm all in?
So in my book, I call
which we are going to talk about.
Yeah, which we talk about. So 3 keys to success. And one of the things that I talk about, the third key, I call it arrogant confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it arrogant confidence because if you looked at it, it kind of feels almost arrogant. it's like a next level above you of confidence that you have to put on sometimes, just this level of confidence. I've interviewed a lot of successful people. I have the podcast Success Is, and I've talked with a lot of successful people, not just financially successful, but people from different industries. It could be authors, entrepreneurs, hedge fund managers, a little bit of everything. And most of them have this moment where they faced just extreme difficulty, challenge, something, and they had to push through it. Just the doubt, the you're crazy if you're doing this. And they took this risk, they took it and pushed through it. And on the other side was the success. I had the same thing. I call it the summer of darkness. And in that summer, it started off with my partner in the food delivery company telling me he was done with it. He wanted out. And he was going to sell my company to somebody that I did not want to be a partner with. So I had to buy him out. So that started the summer off. And then at the time I was on our insurance here in the United States needs some work, but I was on a self-employment insurance. And I found out that they were not covering my autistic child's therapy. And I was paying $6,000 a month. And they eventually said, nope, you're not covered. We got to kick you out. So I had an upset wife because our son was not getting the therapy that he needed as an autistic child. And I was handcuffed. There's nothing I could do. And then the third thing is our dog of almost 15 years ended up dying that summer. And I was at the vet and they were going to have to perform surgery and it was going to cost us like $15,000 for the surgery. And I remember thinking, how am I going to afford this? I just put everything at this moment in time. I am the poorest that I've ever been. How am I going to do this? And it was in that moment going, what did I do? I left a 6-figure job. I was making great money, prestige, all that stuff, traveling, doing all the things that the younger me would have been amazed that I'm doing. I gave it all up to start this crazy thing. Did I just mess up my family and my future and all that? But I pushed through it. And I worked some very long days and I just hustled and I just grinded at it. And we ended up having the best year we ever had. And it catapulted the company to what it ended up being. But in that moment, that was dark. I mean, I was putting in job applications to companies at that time. I was submitting my resume because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but pushed through it, stuck with it, and ended up being the greatest thing that I did in that moment on the other side of that difficulty.
Well, thank you for your honesty because I feel like it's so refreshing to hear that from someone who is very successful at what they've accomplished, because I know our listeners will be probably going through similar things, at some phase of their business, or, maybe they've been through it and they're like, oh, it's so nice to hear someone else say that I've gone through this stuff too, because we don't always get to hear those stories. And I think it's really important because social media can paint a certain picture. And I think we need more voices that just say, hey, go for your dreams, do it. And also know that it's okay if you're going through X, Y, Z.
That's part of the reason why I started the podcast and ultimately wrote the book. Was social media paints this certain picture of success. And I have a different view. And I've shared it with a lot of other financially successful people that you wouldn't otherwise know that they were as successful as they were. They drive a old Subaru that they've had for years. They don't wear new clothing and things like that, but they're content. They're happy. And there's this guy that I met years ago, a good mentor of mine. He owned all of these tax companies, very successful entrepreneur. But if you saw the guy, you'd just think he was just a blue collar worker, nothing about it. But he loved it. He loved what he did. And that was his priority. His family and his business were his priority. It didn't care about the new car and all the other things. And so I really wanted to talk about those things in my book and in my podcast and explore what are the other versions of success out there other than what social media shows us, right? That you can rent a jet interior for a photo shoot and put on some really expensive clothes and look like a millionaire for a photo shoot. Is that success? Is it? I don't know. Can you rent a Lamborghini for a day and do a shoot with it? Is that success? I don't know. I have a different view of success, and I think there's a lot of people that share my view as well.
Yeah, I do too. It's reminding me, I drafted this post for social media yesterday. So I'm not sure if you know this, but for fun, I'm also a pilot and I fly aerobatic airplanes. Anyway, but my post was about putting success into context because I see those photos of people standing next to an airplane. And to be honest, it's not like it impresses me. And the reason is because I fly them. So my context of what that means is very different. Like to me, it's more exciting. Like, can you fly that thing? Then tell me your story, how you got there. Like what we were saying before, I love the journey to that thing. I don't really care so much about what you have in your life. It's great to have possessions and things that you want to have, but I think the story is way more interesting. So
Absolutely. Give me a great story any day. When you talk to somebody and they've traveled and they've done some amazing things and they've got these great stories and these great interactions with people and places around the world, how fascinating is that, right? Great stories, absolutely. You as a pilot, acrobatic pilot, I mean, what a great story. That to me is absolutely success.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right. So we've touched on it a little bit already, and our listeners are like, just tell us about this book.
Yeah.
So tell me, when was the moment that you were like, I think I need to write the 3 keys to success?
Yeah. So I had a food delivery company and I worked with helping people become entrepreneurs. So a lot of them could come from these different, backgrounds, and it could be a sales background, could be they've never owned or ran a company before. And we'd have to take them and turn them into a successful entrepreneur in their location. And so it started with that. And then when I started my podcast and I was interviewing these people, I would ask them certain questions. Here's a question I would ask them. I'd say, "Hey, what are you reading right now?" And a lot of them would just pull out of their cabinet back there and be like, "Oh, this is the book I'm reading right now," and they whatever the book was. I was amazed at the number of successful people. All of them, every single one of them was a reader. And the data supports that. There's a statistic in the United States that upon graduating college, 42% of college graduates will never read a full book again. Crazy statistic. 42% will never complete a full book again in their entire life. On the flip side, the top CEOs in the US read roughly 52 books a year, so roughly a book a week. So there's definitely a difference there, right? And there's some key attributes. So I took a lot of these conversations and that I had with both the franchisees that I had for my previous company and these conversations I had with people on my podcast, and we started distilling what are these key attributes that we see over and over again, and we wrote them in the book. Now I'm going to warn you about my book. It is not just a book that you read and then say, okay, I got it. I'm successful. There's some work material in there, and it's difficult. Because if you want true growth, you have to put in the work. And I talk about it several times in the book that action is far more important than whatever your ideas or whatever your goals are. The action is the most important part. And I follow up with activities in the book that you have to complete. You have to do them. I'm sorry. One of them at the very start is writing out your goals. If it's a written goal, you're 33% more likely to achieve it. If it's written and shared with somebody, you're 76% more likely to achieve it. If it's written, shared, and you visualize it, so you can actually visualize yourself completing that goal, you're 140% more likely to achieve that goal. So there's some power behind having a written goal. And that's what we start with, is the right written goals. The next thing we move on to is establishing healthy habits while getting rid of the negative habits or the habits that are bringing you down. One of the worst habits that people have nowadays is their phone, right? It's like Pavlov's dog. Every time that bell rings, you're salivating. Well, that phone is an addiction and it's draining you and it's sucking the life out of you. Here's something crazy. I haven't had notifications turned on my phone in over 2 years. You can't call me. You can't text me. I will check the messages on this when it's convenient for me or when I've scheduled to check the messages on there. And these are things that we talk about in the book, and establishing and understanding the importance of good habits and bad habits is something that I've tracked from every successful person out there. And then the third thing we talked about a minute ago, which was arrogant confidence. If you want to pursue these goals, you got to put on this hat to do things that are outside of your comfort zone. You have to be willing to get up on stage and talk to people. You have to be willing to approach somebody for an investment loan. You have to be willing to say, you know what, I don't know how to do this in this moment, but I will figure it out. Because that's the way to success. So that's what we talk about in this book. If you want to, it's peppered in there with some of my personal stories as well. But I got to warn you, there is some work effort in here. But if you really want to work on your version of success, pick up my book. It's available basically at every retailer. It's called The 3 Keys to Success. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So the thing that really stood out for me as you were just sharing that, we'll come back to the phone thing because I have something to say about notifications. But what you were saying about being willing, I thought that was really beautiful because there are going to be various elements within our businesses that we don't really want to do. And maybe in the beginning, we might need to do more of them. And later on, they can be outsourced. But I think the key word was willing. Like, are you willing to show up for this? Are you willing to do that? And I think if there's a willingness, it just takes away this feeling of I have to do this. It brings in a lightness, and I feel like it's a more energetic approach to like, yeah, I am willing to do this because I want to build my business into this and I want to achieve my version of success.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that's really interesting with a lot of successful people is they look at life like it's a game, and I love talking to people like that. Like it's a game and they're just playing it and they're just
Yeah.
having fun with it and they're figuring things out and they're learning new things about themselves. Something cool about my wife is she's a fantasy fiction author, and she just recently did this thing, a book event where she went around to schools and she was talking, and then they played the soundtrack for her book and she was up on stage and gave a speech and read part of her book and all that stuff. And if you knew my wife years ago, she's an introvert, but she's
Mhm.
moved into this new chapter and she was excited about it. And I remember thinking, like, who are you? Like, honestly, who are you? But when you approach life like it's a game, one, it's more exciting. But the other thing is it slows down. If you've looked at your life and you've seen it flying by and it seems like it's going faster and faster and faster, well, they've done studies on this. And they say if you do things that stand out in your brain that you can have as anchor points, you'll help slow time down. And those anchor points are things that are scary, things that are outside of your comfort zone, things that you push yourself into doing. They become anchor points. When we were younger, it happened all the time. You were always doing something that was new, something that was scary, something that was exciting. And that's why time was a lot slower. But as we get older, we get comfortable. We put on this little sweater and we read a book and we do the same thing over and over and over again. Well, if you do the same thing over and over again, your brain just blends it all together and time just seems to fly by. So if you want to slow down, push yourself a bit. Do a scary thing, dive into it, and give your brain those anchor points to hold on to over the years.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so easy to get caught up in the everyday, the routine. And I think what you're sharing is really valuable. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this huge life changing thing that you have to, transform your whole life. I have found just learning one new thing or dedicating my energy to something else that I wouldn't do, or just going to play with my nephews. Like, it just changes up the routine and it just creates more presence in my life. So I'm engaged in activities when I'm doing them, that one activity, I'm there and present.
Yeah,
Have you
and so
found that
people
for
think
yourself?
like when I say this, they think like I should go skydiving or something like that.
Yeah.
No, that's not what I'm saying. And for the record, I did try flying a plane a couple
Did
months
you?
ago. Yeah, my employees bought me as a birthday present or Christmas present.
Yeah.
I think it was Christmas present. They
Yeah.
bought a flight, a school
Yeah.
thing to do it, and it was absolutely terrifying. I realized in that moment that I hate flying. I've never liked flying in general. Why was I up in this plane? Anyways, there's a whole story on that. Recently, at 42 years old, I've started learning piano,
Oh,
and
nice.
it's something new. It's not skydiving, it's not learning how to fly a plane like I was doing. But it's brand new, and I'm terrible at it. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Something new.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what's interesting, and I'm curious to know if this relates to your piano. When I first started flying, I thought, gosh, this is the first time I'm I'm like a beginner at something in a long time. And I just felt so like, oh, I'm new to this. Like, can I even do this? Like, it was all of that. But I loved it because it just put things into perspective. I was like, damn, I haven't really been in this position for such a long time. Is that what you're finding?
I found that with the plane as well. Yes.
Yeah.
My 15-year-old is learning how to drive a car. And
Yeah.
which is terrifying for us, by the way. Like as soon as he hit a certain speed, it was the scariest moment of my life. Like
Really?
yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is because you hit that point where you hit a certain speed where you're like, if we hit something at this, I'm dead, you know?
Oh.
And when we hit that speed, I was really just terrified, that this 15-year-old child, this baby, is operating this vehicle that we're both in. But when I was in the plane, I had the perspective that he is having, right? Like driving is so second nature to us, we don't even think about it when you're driving an automobile. But in the
Yeah.
plane, yeah, I'm a beginner. I didn't know anything. Everything was
Mm,
new to me and I was terrified by it.
mm,
But yes, it's a memory that's going to stick with me. And the same thing with the piano as well. The thing I think
mm,
about with the piano is I don't have any expectations of me being fantastic at piano.
mhm.
Just showing up every day and doing it, the lesson is enough for me. And
Yeah.
the challenge of it and the fact that I'm pushing myself to do it is what I'm focused on. Will I get
Mm,
better? Yeah, probably. Hopefully I'll be able to play a song on my own. I'll hopefully get to that point. But I'm not
mm,
as focused on the long-term destination on this as I am just showing up every moment for it and doing something that's difficult and challenging for myself at 42 years old.
yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think the other thing about what you're saying is you're not sitting here going, okay, I've started piano and I want to become the best in the world at the piano, you know? I think sometimes as adults and I don't know where this is influenced, if it's culturally as well, but there's this idea that, well, if you start something, then you've got to be really good at it. But what about just doing something because you enjoy it, even if you're not the greatest, but because it's enjoyable and you're learning something new. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of times we're focused on the end goal more than the the micro goals or the micro improvements, right?
mm,
And what I've seen from a lot of people and what I've experienced in my own life is I have the North Star goal. I have the thing that I'm focusing on, the larger purpose, the thing that I want to achieve. But I'm really focused on the individual steps in front of me, one. And then something that I do that's forced is a gratitude journal. Every night before I go to bed, I do a gratitude journal. And I think because we as humans are so easy to always focus on the lack of or the struggle or the difficulty, I have to force myself to focus on the things that I'm grateful for. And when
mhm,
you do that, you start realizing that there are a lot of wins. Like just the fact that you did that next step and you moved it forward is a big win. And so for me, forcing the gratitude journal has helped out with that a lot.
can I ask how long have you been doing the gratitude journal for?
A couple years, I think it's been.
Hmm.
It started for me with meditation, and then I think I read Miracle Mornings. Have you read that book?
No, I haven't read.
Hal, I can't remember his last name, but he writes it and he goes through all these things that he does every morning. It's like physical
Mhm.
exercise, meditation, gratitude journal, journaling, all these things. I read the book. I didn't do all of the things, but I was already practicing meditation at the time.
Mhm.
And I have a whole story around meditation. When I started it off, I was like, what is this? Like, what's the point? I can't figure this thing out. But I had heard enough successful people doing it that I just kept
Mhm.
doing it. I just pushed
Mhm.
through it. I stopped expecting anything from it and started doing it and saw amazing benefits from it. But then after doing that for a while and reading his book, I said, I know the importance of this gratitude journal, but I never stick to it. Well, I'm somebody who in my book talks about establishing healthy habits. So I started working that in my habit routine. And I'll tell you the biggest thing that I pulled out of it was it helps me sleep at night. Like I do it before bed and it's really great to sit there and just have this journal and just write about the things that you're happy about. Like we are alive and we live in a time where there's hopefully in your area of the world there's not catastrophic war and poverty and disease going on right now. That alone is something to be happy for. But if you're as blessed as I am, then you get a chance to reflect on those things at the end of your day. Gosh, there's nothing, no better way of falling asleep at night than reflecting on the things that you're grateful
Yeah, the reason why I asked was because it reminded me of this exercise I did with one of my best friends who went through cancer a few years ago. And we decided just, I don't know, we came up with this idea that every night at the end of the day, she lives in the States and I live in Australia. So we'd send each other at the end of our days the top, 5 to 10 things that we're grateful for that happened that day. And what I noticed, we did that for about 6 months, I think. And it was one super supportive for her. And what I noticed, which I didn't know I was going to get it, I wasn't going into it to get something, but I was just doing it. But what I noticed that I did get out of it was how differently I woke up in the morning. The mindset, it was brighter. The thoughts that you sort of wake up and you're like, how they start up, it's like, oh, this, all the complaining thoughts, they quietened. So I was curious because very similarly, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, how fantastic. I love that were doing that with somebody else. I think that's even a better way of doing it. If you could share your gratitude with somebody else, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a great way of doing
Yeah,
it.
it was pretty cool. And it was fun because I'd see the little things that lit up her day, and she'd see the things that lit up my day. And so it was a really fun process. I recently had to go back through the messages because I was trying to find a date when something happened to do with flying, and I was going back through our messages and I started rereading some of them again. And I thought, oh, wow, that was so beautiful, And again, that same sort of feeling came back. So I think that's something that's so easy for our listeners to do. It's available to you right whenever you want to do it. And it is transformational. You can take both our words for it.
Oh, I love it. I love the idea. So yeah, that's fantastic. So I think it's a great idea. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, and you did touch on the notifications on your phone.
Yeah.
So that's I have most of my notifications turned off, but yours are next level.
The
So
whole thing's turned off. Yeah.
this is what I mean. Like, I'm impressed because I notice with myself, even like my phone is with me all the time. And I don't need my phone, but I just notice it's with me because, I'm doing emails and all this stuff, whatever my reason is. But I thought yours was like pretty impressive because I notice the days when I'm probably feeling my happiest is when I'm not on my phone, when I'm out doing something else and I forget about my phone. And I think it must for you, and you can tell me what it does for you, but does it create way more brain space?
Absolutely. Um, you know, if we were to ask like our grandparents years ago, what would you do if you had this device in your pocket that you could access, this little black box you could access and have all of the knowledge of the world at your fingertips to do whatever you want?
Mm.
They would be like, that's magic. That's incredible. That's amazing. Oh my God, the things I could accomplish in this life, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is these apps, these devices, they're designed to constantly get your attention. Everything is designed to get your attention. So, what if we could have the benefit of having this device where we have access to all the world's communication and be ultra productive, but eliminate the things that are trying to suck your attention into mindlessly scrolling through them? And I think you can, but it's first identifying that what are you doing on this device? For me, like for instance, with social media, it started with scheduling time to look at social media, scheduling time to check my emails, scheduling time to do the things that I knew I had to do to continue to run my business, to stay connected with people. But I didn't want that thing controlling me. The thing with time and money is if you don't tell it where to go, it'll find somewhere to go automatically on its own. And so this is me telling my time where to go. If you're somebody who's overwhelmed, stressed, struggling, like trying to figure out what to do with their time, start with that. Analyze where you're spending your time and then tell it where to go. Everything, especially the things that you're doing on that phone, the checking the social media. If you're going to do it, schedule a 30 minutes that you're going to go through your social media posts and schedule things. And you have it in your calendar that you're going to do it at that time. And then try not to do it at the other time. If you find yourself uncomfortable, itching to check your phone, what is that? That's an addiction. Doesn't matter if it's alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, or your phone. That's an addiction. And you should run from that. Anything where you're feeling like you got to do it. You're thinking about it first thing in the morning, right? Oh, I got to check my phone. What's going on with my updates and stuff? That's the definition of an addiction. And those are things that are taking away your time from other things and enjoying life. And for me, the biggest thing that it's doing is taking away from me being present in the moment, being present where I'm at right now. And that's why I disabled all the notifications on it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It really is an attention stealer, and it robs you of being present. And I find, like, I've had most of my notifications off for many years. I don't care, like, and I'm very intentional. Like you said, I'll check my stuff in the morning, but I don't need to check it throughout the day. And I think the other thing is, and I think it's a kind of like a more complex conversation than we'll probably cover now, but I think, social media is often filling a void for people. So for those who do find it really challenging to step away from it, or they want to be checking their likes or whatever updates and things like that, it's like looking deeper and going, okay, well, what is that comment giving me? What are those likes giving me? Because it's usually masking something that's not being filled by you from within.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the analogy that I give is think about prior to processed sugar. The
Mm-hmm.
thing that you had was fruit. Fruit was sweet and it was good, and that was the dessert. You were eating fruit. Well, then processed sugar came along with candy, and fruit is the healthy alternative to candy. But it used to be the sweet reward that you had. But
Mm.
somewhere along the way, sugar replaced that. Social media has become that. Our parents and our grandparents used to meet up together. They'd go to each other's houses. They would socialize in events. They'd have parties. They'd do things together. Now we have this fake sugar that we call social media, and we think we have a social presence, but we don't. It's a fake world that we're having with fake people, and we're having fake interactions with them, and there's filters and there's AI and there's all this stuff. So we're not having the face-to-face interactions and the real social culture that we should have. So I would say, yeah, social media is great for connecting with people across the world, but it's also great to get together with somebody for drinks or board games or go play a pickleball or tennis or something like that with them. Get together on a regular basis, like you don't have a device that would make it so much easier, because that's not the real social connection. The real social
Yeah.
connection is actually meeting somebody face to face.
Yeah. Beautifully said. And I agree. There is a magic that just you can't replace in the human to human connection. And it's something that I very much cherish nowadays too, And I find that when I get to have like conversations with people online, and if I have the pleasure of meeting them in real life because we're in the same country or state, like often it's beautiful because we used, technology to connect us, but then it's like then the real relationship can happen outside of that, and it's often very rewarding.
Yeah, I agree. Even these are like face-to-face interactions with video, and we're having conversation with people are much better than what we see on social media, where it's all pre-packaged, filtered,
Mm.
AI and driven posts. It's not the same as having this type of interaction.
Yeah, definitely. So our conversation is coming to a close, but is there anything that you're burning to share with our audience that I haven't touched on in our chat yet?
One thing I would say is examine yourself. You talked about this a little bit ago, but examine yourself. Really spend time working on your inside. We really haven't talked a lot about that, but I was raised one of seven children. We were raised by a single mother. We didn't have a lot of money. And I got a lot of the success that I had through my work ethic, just grinding it out, working long hours and that. And there's certainly a time and place for that. But eventually I got to the point where I was a multimillionaire. I had everything that I wanted to set out, and I was still working the long hours. And I looked back and said, why am I doing this? What's the point of this? Why am I continuing to do this? And it was that self-examination of peeling back the onion to see that there was this anxiety inside me that I was dealing with. And the only way to deal with that anxiety was just to work, 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 work. I didn't want peace. I didn't want relaxation. I didn't want quiet. And it was until I dealt with that on the inside that I was able to expand my business exponentially, but also find peace and happiness and a peace that transferred over to my family and the people around me. And I now have the quality of life that I wanted. And I would say I have the success, even though I achieved the financial success years ago, because I was able to find and deal with that anxiety inside me. So we talk a lot about external success and achieving that, but it begins with dealing with the inside first. So we didn't talk a lot about that, but I really think that's an important component to deal with first before you really start driving after some of your goals, because otherwise they can be crutches for dealing with the things that are going on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I totally agree with you. And I find that when you do deal with the stuff on the inside, like in your story you shared when you did, your business expanded and grew. And I often think that, and I think it comes at least for me, it's come at different stages throughout my life. It's like I've had these like evolutionary turning points where something stops working and then I have to go, okay, well, what's not working? Why is this not working? And I go in and I have this whole self-reflective process, probably similar to you. And yeah, noticing whether it's anxiety or whether it's like, last year was definitely looking inwards a lot and dealing with anxiety so I can relate. And it was really tough. But then I came out of it this year and it's reflecting in my world too. And I think that they go hand in hand together. Like at some point, you're going to have to look within.
You're going to have to. And if you read my book, we're going to do a lot of that self-reflection in here. We're going to say, okay, these are your goals. Why are they your goals? Dig into them. What are your values? What are your beliefs? Let's peel back the onion and dig into them, because you really got to figure out who that is inside there and what's going on there. Otherwise, you're going to constantly be having the struggles on the outside, right? The stress, the running into roadblocks, the reaching that ceiling and then not being able to move past it, the addictions, the competition with other people, the little vices that you have, all of those things. And it all starts on the inside.
Well, I'm looking forward to picking up your book and taking some time to go through it and the questions, because I really do enjoy thoughtful questions that, when posed, really ask you to sort of dig deep and reflect. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
Thank you.
All right. And we're going to finish off with the Leaders Lane sprint. So
all right.
4 quick fire questions. Just go with your gut. The first one is, what's one of the best experiences you've had in your life?
Oh, I had surgery on my leg the other day and they took the cast thing off my leg. And when that thing hit the fresh air, I said, this is one of the greatest feelings I've ever had in my life.
No, nice.
It,
Yeah.
it was wrapped in cotton and it was so itchy and sweaty. It was amazing as soon as it hit the air. So
Yeah.
I will say that is the most top of mind because it was just about a month ago.
Yeah.
And there is these little moments that I've been trying to appreciate more and more by living in the present. And there's times when I'm just driving down the road with my family in the car and I just look around and I'm just amazed. I'm amazed at where I live. I'm amazed at my family. I'm just amazed at what's going on in the present world. And so the yes, the leg thing with the moment, but it's more about the reflection on that moment being as simple as it was, being as great as it was, is really what I've been
Mm.
focusing on for myself.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. And I can really sense your appreciation. It's not everyone does take time to just go, oh, wow, oh my God, this is my life, and just savor that. So it's really awesome to see. Okay. Who or what brings out your best?
The thing that brings out my best is when I have time to process the day's information. So we bought a 54-acre commercial horse farm, and it is the most beautiful property. We have ponds and lakes and streams running through it. And I love just walking through it and just thinking, just reflecting, just observing. And I have the best ideas. I'll solve problems and all of that because I'm letting go in that moment and allowing my brain that's just bombarded with all of the stimulus of going on and conversations and meetings and emails and all of that. And I'm just giving it time to process it. And I think that's so important to have just the time to reflect and do nothing, quote unquote, nothing. Just allow your brain to figure things out. Because I'll get out of one of those walks, go back into my office, feel refreshed, and suddenly I'm, yeah, solving these problems and we have new ideas and new directions we're taking. So for me, it's taking that time away, just stepping back to do, like I said, quote unquote, nothing, I think is incredibly important for me to be the best version of myself every day.
Love it. And the property sounds so idyllic.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. I'll send you a link later. You can check out some of the videos and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
awesome. That sounds great. Okay, what's one thing that you would like to do before you die?
I've got a whole list of things. So I just
Mhm.
recently finished the 100 goals thing.
Did you?
A couple, what's that?
I said, did you?
I
Wow.
did. So I went
Yeah.
through since my book just recently published, I went through and rewrote my 100 goals, and so I have a whole list of various things that I'm focused on. And I got to tell you, it was really hard. Again, it's really difficult to write 100 goals. I just want to be clear. I've done it several times in my life at this point, and every time it's just as hard. But some things that I'm really proud of. So we have our son's autistic, and we started a nonprofit a few years ago called Michigan Horse Therapy because we own the horse farm, and there's
Mhm.
horse therapy with special needs children. Does amazing things. It's incredible, and it's to help out people that wouldn't necessarily be able to afford it otherwise. Along with that, I have a goal of hiring 20% people with disabilities, and we partner with a staffing company in the United States that's helping us with some of that stuff. So I have some goals around that. I want to be able to make sure that I'm creating jobs for people like my son so that he'll have a future and be able to help still contribute to society, in the future. So that's a goal of mine. I have another book that I kind of in my head tossing around that I'd like to eventually publish as well out there as well. And then we're going to be traveling probably more with our kids in the future. Want to travel more and bring them along with my trips to Europe and things like that as well. So those are kind of some of the short-term goals that I have for myself. But I am somebody who has plenty of written goals that I want to achieve in this life. And I just recently went through 100 of them, and they're pretty cool. So I'm excited for them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you're excited for them because then you know that, they're
Like
for
this
you.
is a good one right here. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally. Awesome. All right. My final question for today is, what did you enjoy most about our conversation?
The thing I enjoyed most about the question that you are really good, you are a phenomenal listener. I have my own podcast host, but I sometimes struggle at listening to the person and the next question. And you are able to juggle both of those better than any other host I've been a guest on. And that I really appreciate that because the conversation flows. You're addressing like what I talked about. You're adding on to what I talked about, and so it's a great interview, and I really appreciate it. And I'm envious of your ability to do that.
Oh, thank you. That's such kind feedback. I really, really, that's very kind of you. Thank you for sharing that with me. Yeah, look, I think it's something I love doing. I'm so passionate about it. And I just love being able to hear people's stories. And you've shared so many beautiful things in this chat. Like, I noticed we've even gone over time. I hope that's okay.
That's all right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a really delightful and easy conversation. And I have no doubt that our listeners will take away so many juicy things to implement in their own lives as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, my listeners, the show notes will contain all the links to Phil's book and his website and his socials. So you'll be able to get in touch and follow his work. And thank you for tuning in. And thanks again, Phil, for joining me.
Thank you so much.